Welcome to the latest episode of the Best of Cool Culture Corner. We look back at the episodes of the podcast Cool Culture Corner and apply them to today of the new normal with COVID-19 unrest and possible recession going on. I am Ken Bader, your host for both the Best of Cool Culture Corner and the podcast Cool Culture Corner, and wanted to talk today about episode 52, the strategic culture. Now, before I get into that and play an excerpt from that original episode, my apologies for not being with you a couple weeks ago. The Best of Cool Culture Corner is meant to come out every 2 weeks. I had to take the other week off because of some minor family issues, as well as a chance to visit with some family, and most importantly, to plan a surprise birthday party for my lovely wife. So I've got a good excuse. And I think that is a good example for the Best of Cool Culture Corner. Sometimes work needs to be put aside for the importance of taking care of your loved ones, especially my beautiful wife, who puts up with a lot of aggravation just simply being married to me. And for all those people that are anti-party in COVID-19, there were only 7 people, so we were able to properly socially distance for my wife's surprise birthday party. Anyhow, the strategic culture. Now, I did that episode a couple years ago, episode 52. As always, it reminds me of how clunky some of those early episodes were, as well as sound quality. But I made a number of good points there, a few of which that I want to obviously repeat by playing a portion of that show, and also point out a few significant aspects of that I believe really apply in COVID-19 days. Because even though we're probably not doing the in-person strategic planning junket like we may have done in the past, which makes a lot of sense for a couple of different reasons. That doesn't mean strategy and planning goes away. In fact, it's even more important today, and I think COVID-19 actually gives us an excuse to do things, frankly, a little bit better with a little bit more involvement. But first, let's listen to a portion of episode 52, The Strategic Culture.
Our subject today, the strategic culture. Now, I've hit on this subject a few times, both in this podcast and in other areas of content that I've written or taped, namely my YouTube show, Branding the Experience. But at the time of this taping in mid-August, a lot of clients and prospective clients of mine are starting to get into the mode of strategic planning for 2018. Some of them, fortunately, are strategically planning all year long and recorrecting and retracing and retrenching, which I highly recommend, because maybe years ago a strategy session was a once-a-year type of program. Today, with everything moving so quickly, you really need to keep track of your strategy and the moves within your strategic plan, at least on a monthly, preferably even on a weekly basis. But even those clients that are that diligent usually do prefer a formal strategic planning session once a year to get everybody together, usually board and management, to review the year and to set the foundation for the following year. To have that guideline, to have that basis, so even if something does happen, positive or negative, which necessitates a change in our strategy, we have a foundation from which to work from, rather than, as one of my clients years ago used to say, we just wing it, and we need to stop just winging it, although that could be fun too, I guess. But back to the main subject, a strategic culture. And what I mean by that is finding a way to get all of your employees involved in your strategic planning process, especially if you're going to have an annual session. Now, if you're a 6-person team, maybe you're a small restaurant or say a financial institution or a startup, or something along those lines, you could easily meet for a half a day and get everybody involved. If you're a 600-person operation, makes it a little bit more difficult, but I do believe there are still ways that you can get every employee involved, and I think that it's very advantageous, because the last thing people want, especially sharp employees, is to have one more thing shoved down their throat. I know from early in my career working for some big organizations, just a feeling of what am I, just a peon? Where the management would get us all in a room and say, these are the strategic goals and the mission and the vision that we, the management and board, after 5 days in Hawaii, came up with. You're already working from a negative. But as I try to impart in all of my content, your employee is your first customer or client or member. Much as I tell marketing professionals that I mentor, it's very difficult to get your target market excited about what you're doing and the products and services you're offering if the employees that work side by side alongside of you aren't excited about it. If they don't want to be there, if they don't want to be part of it, then you're fighting an uphill battle anyway. And with all this talk today, which I do agree with, of needing to engage customers, you really need to engage your employees first. As I keep seeing on Facebook, Branson has this quote. I don't even know if it's from him, but if it is, kudos, because it's the right quote, which is, your employees are number one. Not your customers. I don't know if that's quite right, because I would say that everybody's number one. You can't just focus on employees or just focus on customers. You got to focus on every stakeholder of your business. But I guarantee you, if you don't engage your employees first, you're going to have a tough time with your target market. And I also guarantee that if you truly go out of your way to engage your employees, most of the time, your employees are going to rise to the top and provide the experience for your customers, clients, or members that your brand needs. So a couple of tips as we enter into strategic planning session. One is ask for input from the front lines before you have the strategic planning session. Because once you go there, then you've missed out on some valuable information. And when I talk about the front lines, I'm not just talking about your frontline people that are dealing with customers, like your servers or your tellers or your call center. I'm talking about also the front lines of accounting, those folks that deal with some of the payroll issues and maybe some of the problems with fellow employees. The front lines of IT, the folks that have to go into other people's offices and hear their problems with the system or the computers and so forth. Who knows better than what issues we have with the people we serve, whether they be fellow employees or customers, than the people, on that main line of the organization chart. And that isn't the C-level. That's all the folks that are doing, all of the big work every day. So get people involved. If you have a smaller staff, just ask them during a staff meeting or via email. Say, you know what, we're going into strategic planning in 2 to 3 weeks. This is our mission. This is our vision. This is what we're trying to accomplish. We want your input. Maybe it's something formal like a survey. Maybe it's something semi-formal like a lunch with the CEO or the owner. or maybe it's just informal. Just, if you have some ideas along these lines as to what our direction may be for next year or the coming years or even the next 3 to 6 months, based on your experience with each other and with our clientele, we want to hear about it. Now, granted, you'll have some people that just don't answer it. You'll have some people that'll be quiet. You'll have some folks that will be a little bit negative and use that as a foundation to just simply rant, which I agree with is not the place to do it. But even if they did, you know exactly what you're dealing with in that employee. And you'll get some crazy stuff too, but then you'll also get some really, really good ideas. Every time that I've ever encouraged a client, management, business owner, or otherwise, to engage their staff and get their ideas, there's always, and I do mean always, something really positive that's come out of it. There's always been at least one aha idea where, hey, you know what? That makes a lot of sense, and we have the resources to do that. Whether it's something simple or maybe even more complex, I've always gotten something back that's positive. So, from that standpoint, maybe sometimes depending on your employee base, you have to sift through some goofy ideas, but so what? Isn't it worth it for that one golden nugget idea that can really create a unique experience for your business? Of course it is. So number one, engage your staff before the planning session. And number two, obviously, after you sift through all the information, take some of the top suggestions to the actual planning session. Maybe you want to lead off with that with management because, obviously not everybody can be at a planning session. Maybe it's something that if you're the facilitator, you want to sprinkle in at certain parts of the agenda. But use that feedback, the valuable feedback, during the actual planning session. I think that if you do go through the task of engaging your staff first, it actually might make your job as the facilitator to create that agenda a little bit easier. And then number three, and this may be the most important of the three. Obviously, you can't do three without one and two. And number three is after the planning session, not only should you explain and give detail on the retreat and what you were able to determine, but I think you need to truly communicate how the feedback was used. And I think from a positive standpoint, specifically talk about, here are some ideas that really helped us out, and this is how we're going to implement them. And I also think that it's valuable for good ideas or really strong-willed ideas that didn't make the cut, for those to be addressed as well. To say, you know what, we've gotten a couple of ideas and feedback on vacation time. And while we would like to give everybody an extra day, that simply can't happen because of budget, because of coverage, because of safety for other employees. Not saying that the people that want extra vacation in this scenario or example will be happy about that feedback, but at least you're addressing it. And telling them from a business standpoint why you might not be able to do that. Employees don't expect, at least your best employees, don't expect to get everything they ask for, but they do expect to be respected and to be listened to. So just a few tips from a strategic culture standpoint on how you might want to approach getting your staff involved before the strategic planning session, during and after.
So a few things that I really want to point out from episode 52 and how it applies today. First, and I've said this not just in that particular piece, but in a number of different forums and other shows that I'm privileged to produce, that the employee is your first customer, your first member, your first client. that especially when it comes to branding and marketing, especially branding, because branding is more important than even the marketing. Marketing, in my mind, is just a piece of the overall branding. So when it comes to branding, how can we get our prospective customers, members, clients excited about what we're doing and who we are if our employees aren't excited and on board with what we're doing? And I think that is really, really important today, even more important today. People are scared, people are frustrated, people are confused as to what's going on. Even if a vaccine comes tomorrow for COVID-19, there's still going to be chaos, economic issues, possible unrest. So a lot of things going on right now. So messaging properly to our employees that not only are you still an important part of what we're doing, you're an even more important part of what we're doing. So we want to get you involved in the strategic planning process. Now that we're using this type of technology, Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Skype or whatever the heck it is that we're using, we could have, in essence, small focus groups that are strategic planning type groups to hear from our frontline employees at this store or at this branch, and get some real input as to, from the front lines, what our strategy really needs to focus on going into 2021. The second is, again, involvement, not just engagement. I talked in episode 52 about engagement, and since then, I want to say about over 100 episodes into it, I realized that employee engagement just isn't enough anymore. It's passe. It's like Comp USA or AOL when it comes to getting on the internet. Employee engagement was great, maybe in the last decade, but now we have to go past just engagement to true involvement of our team. And I think that using technology, even using the phone, but using this technology where we could see each other's faces, we can write on a whiteboard on the screen to have people, especially if they're working from home, involved in either the strategic planning session or some type of a pre-strategic planning session, I think is a great way to show involvement. And frankly, from a business standpoint, going into 2021 with all of these question marks above our head, we need everybody on the same page. We need everybody rowing in the same direction. Whatever analogy or overused phrase you want to use, we need that right now more than anything else. So don't just engage, involve our teams in the strategic planning process, either using this technology or in some other way. And last is involving the front lines, which I talked about in the strategic culture. And I think it goes without saying that our front lines aren't just our customer or member facing employees. There are employees that are serving other employees, especially now where you have businesses that maybe have 100 people or more working from home, and in the IT department or the HR department or the accounting department has certain challenges when it comes to such a vast remote workforce. That certainly needs to be looked at from a strategy standpoint going into 2021, and also look at that from a positive. Maybe it gives COVID-19 gives us an excuse to make a change. I've said this before with a number of clients: is as bad as COVID-19 is and the issues that it creates business wise, when it gives us an opportunity, an excuse to do something different, maybe to close a branch or a store that just wasn't producing to begin with before the pandemic, or to change the way that we serve our clientele. Because we found that while we were apprehensive to go more tech, we found that, hey, this works just fine, maybe even better. Let's embrace some of these things that we learned during this pandemic. Case in point, in another show that I produced, Credit Union Business News Podcast, when I had a chance to talk to the Chief Risk Officer, Daniela Parker, for a credit union in the state of Washington, she had mentioned that this proves that there may be an opportunity to grab talent from other states, meaning that, hey, you know what, we might not have been able to afford to bring this person out to come work for us, but hey, you know what, she or he has a really sharp mind and would fit in well with our culture. Let's let her work from Fargo, North Dakota, and just come in twice a year for certain meetings and so forth. We're realizing that we can do that and still have a culture without necessarily having everybody physically there. In fact, in some ways, it might even work a little bit better. But I hope this helps going into strategic planning season here in September of 2020. And as always, I'm available for strategic planning facilitation, have been doing this for about a dozen years, well over a decade, and have the technology to do some of the things that I talked about earlier. So even if it doesn't make sense to fly me to your location, which I'm still open to do, we could certainly build a strategic planning session using technology without having to deal with hotels and planes and so forth. So feel free to seek me out. Best way to get a hold of me is via email at kbator, BATOR, at btcinc.net, not .com, .net. But I hope this particular look back at the episode on strategic culture helps you. Hope that I can help you in the future. Thank you for spending some time with me today. And here's hoping, as always, that you have a cool culture corner within your unique business. Take care.
Now a word from our sponsor, Bader Training and Consulting. BTC is the creator of the B plus C plus S formula. Our clients that implement that formula increase their net income by 124% and grow their business by 17% on average. The best place to start working with Bader Training and Consulting is with our B plus C plus S audit. The service pinpoints issues as well as attributes of your business's unique brand, culture, and strategy. Learn more or sign up for a B plus C plus S audit at www.btcinc.net/BCS-audit.